This is a change in mandatory sexual harassment prevention training. Anybody here in an organization with 50 employees? No? So this applies only to them, and except for this other one down here at the bottom. Employers with 5+ employees must post a new notice regarding transgender rights. But this, I recommend this. I recommend that you have, even if you're not required to have it, because there's so much going on. I have a client that called me about a month ago. He found out that his sales guy was sexually harassing one of his employees, and he targeted her because she was alone most of the time. She worked mostly alone in an office, and he would just call her up. He'd call her up, or he'd just show up. And even her other coworkers that were male even made remarks. But he didn't know, the employer didn't know. So he's small, he has 8 employees. He's not required to have this mandatory sexual harassment prevention training. He's not required by law to do it. But here's the thing, if you get a claim of sexual harassment, it's going to go a long ways if you have training. So I really recommend it. This is for employers of 50 employees must have sexual harassment prevention training for any supervisor level or higher. Anybody that manages people must have that. But I recommend, you can get it for very inexpensive, I'm telling you. I have a company that I've taken their online training. It's inexpensive. They can do it at their own pace. It's hardly, and it can be done, you know, and they send you notice if this person has taken it or not or what, and then you have a certificate, goes in their folder, and then you have documentation, and that's the whole thing. You want to show that the employer has taken all steps that they can to create a safe workplace, because that's what this is about. So now, this training must include harassment based on gender identity, gender expression, and sexual orientation. So it's no more just for your straight up sexual harassment as they defined it. They've redefined it a great deal from 2017 and for 2018. Okay, now I know this has been a question. Every single one of my clients asked me this one. Okay, California has made recreational use of marijuana legal. What do we do? Well, I don't want them on the job that way. Well, my response is, you know, you probably don't want them coming to work if they're under the influence of alcohol either, right? So you treat it the same. You just add to your policy, they cannot come to work under the influence, they can't have it on their person, they can't sell it, or any of that.
Yeah, you can smell it on people.
Yeah.
So you know.
Not with edibles.
Yeah, not with edibles, that's true.
Karen, do you know if there's any that applies to contractors? If there's any rules regarding...
You mean if you're an independent contractor?
Yeah.
Well, if you're an independent contractor, or you mean if you have a contractor, you cannot ask, you cannot, these are for employees, Now, you can say as part of your contract, you can put that in your contract with them.
Yeah, but there's no law regarding...
There's no law about this. This is all employer policy, and this is best practices. So I'm recommending to you best practices to use with your employees, and certainly if you have contractors, you can put it in your contract with them.
How about if they said it is for medical use?
Even if it's for medical use, you can still say that you don't want them on the job, yeah. Yeah, that's permitted, because here's the thing. If you had somebody that was taking a prescription medication and it made them so that they couldn't even drive, or it made them dizzy or something like that, you wouldn't want them there either, right? So I have clients that actually had me write a policy that included that, you know, whether it's prescription medication or whatever. And actually, medicinal marijuana is considered to be, is prescribed, and it's treated as a prescription. So you just put that in to your employee handbook. That's, you know, one way of protecting yourself. Now, how do you know? I guess you would know. Like if you were to guess somebody that's under the influence of alcohol, same thing. To make sure that you have, and I really recommend it. If you don't have it in writing, if you don't have the policy in writing, you will have a really hard time. Because here's what happens. Even if somebody under the influence of alcohol, for example, somebody comes into work and they're still drunk from the night before. Okay, I've seen that happen. If you don't have something in writing that says that you have a policy against that, there's no way you can make them leave the job site unless you basically escort them off and suspend them on the spot, but you have to jump through some hoops. And then the thing is, though, send them to an occupational medical clinic to have them tested. So you need to be sure that best practices, otherwise you could get into legal complications around this. They could come back and say, well, I wasn't under the, and you can't make me go, because you have no policy about that. In writing, it needs to be in writing. Now, certainly there are limits. If you are very small and you only have, say you have 2 employees, you could, spend the money and have an employee handbook done, and then then it's taken care of and away you go. Or you can have a verbal share the policies verbally, but it'd be very hard for you to prove, because how are you going to prove that you told them? And the other thing is, and they say, well, I forgot. So I recommend that you have it in writing. It's a best practice from an HR point of view. And then the law deleted all gender-specific personal pronouns in the Fair Employment and Housing Act, which also addresses pregnancy disability leave. It's because now we have people that they consider to be binary, they are non-disclosed, all of that stuff. And oh, by the way, if you haven't done it yet and you have a single user restroom, you have to take the gender-specific signs off. That was in 2016. And if you haven't done that yet, you could get in trouble and have fines on that.